Hello, and welcome back to the Wishing You Well podcast, where we help you navigate your wellness journey each and every week. I'm Amy Albero.
And I'm Catherine Van Eyck. We're both licensed therapists, and we love talking about wellness. Today on Wishing You Well, we're talking about love.
Catherine's favorite.
We're going to answer a really important question. Is love really forever? And to help with that, we'll discuss stages of relationships and how love starts to build, the three love theory of having three loves in your life. Maybe that's you, maybe that's not you. We'll talk about it, and how to sustain your love.
Yeah. Ooh. Love it. I love this topic. I'm excited to get into it. But before we do, let's do a little check-in, a little vibe check, little self-care check-in. Catherine, how's your self-care been? What's on your self-care menu this week?
My self-care has been weird. I feel like it's been really thrown off based on my schedule being really thrown off this week. And so I've had to be really mindful of it in like a different way than if my routine was like in place in the same way that it is. And so I've had to like wing a lot of it. And like, that hasn't been the worst thing. Some of it's been really nice. For instance, my husband's car is in the shop this week. So I've been driving him to work and picking him up at work. I'm like, bye, see you, like, have a good day at school. And the neighborhood where he works in is like this really adorable town. And so after I've dropped him off at like 7 a.m. when he goes to work, then I've just taken a walk right after that in that neighborhood. And that's been really nice. So that's like a different, it's totally different off of my regular morning routine, but also just like a different setting and a different place or whatever. So that actually has been really nice. But in other ways, it's like thrown me off a little bit. And I've had to be like more diligent with myself.
Yeah, I relate to that. My self-care like check is similar to yours, but so you're adapting though. Even though you've had this change, you are making it work for you.
Yes. So I guess like menu wise, it's like I'm at a restaurant where there's no menu and they're just telling me like, this is what the chef's making today. What do you want? I'm like, oh, ooh, I need a minute.
Yeah. Okay. And so have you noticed any like impact, positive, negative, or neutral on like how you've been feeling with your like schedule being all over the place and your self-care having to shift?
All the above. Yeah. I don't know. It's strange because like I like when things go the way that I expect them to. You know, I'm an anomaly like that.
How unique of you.
Exactly. I'm one of a kind. But I get it. You know, life happens. Cars don't last forever. No, I don't think we're going to have to get a new car, which is nice. Whew. But yeah, but also like some of it, like I said, some of it's been surprisingly a gift, I guess. Like being able to do those walks in that town. And yeah, so that's been nice. And also like that time spent with my husband in the car, it's been enjoyable in the morning.
Yeah.
Because we don't do that ever. So I've like integrated into his little morning routine and then made my own little thing out of it. So
that's cool.
Yeah. But more specifically, what else is going on with yours? You said you're having a similar situation.
Well, yes and no. I mean, something that you said, like being more diligent with yourself, that was really resonating with me because I feel like, as you know, and our listeners know, like I've been like, I don't know, I like in some sort of like a rut of some sort. And so like a lot of my self-care really slipped, like my regular like routine self-care practices. And I was giving myself a lot of grace, and like maybe judge the crap out of me for saying this, but like I think it got to a point where I gave myself a little too much grace and like a little too much like indulgence where it wasn't actually serving me anymore. And I just needed to like have a talk with myself and say like, Amy, like this is not actually making you feel better. Like, you know, what's going to make you feel better. You just need to like suck it up and do it. And so I had kind of had it wasn't like a tough love kind of talk, but it was like a little bit more of like a holding myself accountable self-talk of, this isn't working for you. This is not serving you. So like, you need to do the things that serve you. And so I've been really, really focused on like trying to be diligent, like doing things even when I don't feel like it, like, and whether that's like, I don't know, sticking to the, like my menu, my actual menu that I plan to eat. It's, you know, getting my workouts in as scheduled. It's like, when there is sun outside, like grabbing a walk, like doing all the things that always make me feel better, that I just like have been a little like, no, it's okay. So I feel, and like, surprise, surprise, I feel so much better. My energy is better. I feel like I'm back to myself, and, you know, and so
isn't that funny? Like we know.
It's so annoying.
It's so annoying.
It literally is that meme of like, I'm going on my stupid mental health walk. Like,
because I stupidly know it's going to stupidly make me feel better.
So that's how I'm like the epitome of that. Like, I'm doing all these stupid things that make me feel better, and they work. And so I'm glad that I just like had enough of just like not feeling like myself. And then I like just had the thought again, like not a crazy thought, but like, let me do the things that I feel like myself when I'm doing. So I guess in some ways I'd say like it's a little bit of a 3-course meal, because it is just getting back to like the appetizer of like some grounding and like breath work in the morning, my like main courses of like movement, and like having like nice, vibrant, nutritious meals. Shout out to you, Catherine, for the salad. That is like, I mean, I think that is my whole mood.
Ooh. Did you add the prosciutto?
I did not. I added grilled chicken. Okay.
Oh, that would be great too.
Yeah, no, yeah. But the prosciutto, I could see how it would be great. Mm-hmm. And then I'm also like doing like self-care desserts. Like I'm having dinner with a friend tonight after this. So anyway, long story short, I'm having a 3-course meal this week, and I feel great.
You're having it in pieces. It's so nice.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. But, you know, we encourage you all to check in with your self-care too. And if you've been a listener for a while, you may have noticed we switched it up and we put our self-care check-in at the beginning. And it makes sense, right? That like we would check in with ourselves and how we're doing before we get started in what we're talking about. It kind of lines up with our philosophy about self-care. We need to get a sense of what we need in order to figure out how to proceed forward. So we encourage you to do the same thing.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty, we need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly. So with that being said, are we ready to get into this week's episode?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Living and well life put together. Authentic.
We feel it.
Take care of ourselves. So, Catherine, is love forever?
I feel like you're asking me, is love blind? Are you Vanessa Lachey?
Is love really?
Or would you rather be Nick?
I think at this point, Nick all the way.
Well, Amy, not always.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I guess we can finish. The podcast's over.
Done.
Done. Wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it can be. And I think, not always, but it is such a big question. And maybe to like let our listeners behind the curtain a little bit. This question came up as a result of just a conversation you and I were having, especially after like the infidelity episode that we recorded with Carly King. And so this is something that we were talking about, and in us talking about it, we realized that this has been a question that other people that we've worked with, whether it's colleagues or actual clients, have had, just people ask about, and something that I know listeners at home, you might have wondered about, whether you're in a long-term relationship or not. And so,
or when I'm in my most insecure state, like, do you still love me? That happens.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I just had a little like tiny temper tantrum with my husband yesterday, and I was like, oh fuck.
It's over.
And so, I think it does, because love is so kind of precious. It's something that we search for so long. Like it can feel so vulnerable to have and to try to hold on to. And so of course it would make sense that people would worry that they might lose it or it might not last.
Right. Yeah. It's only natural when you're hanging on to something really good. You want it to last forever. You want to savor it.
Yeah.
Like that salad that you're eating right now. It's that good.
It really is. We'll have to share the recipe.
Yeah.
Details.
Well, I mean, let's like bring it back to before love.
Mm-hmm.
And like the stages and like building up to that love, because we don't just land at love typically.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that comes before that really plays into that foundation. And of course, all the sparks flying and all that passion.
Right. Yeah. There are different stages of a romantic relationship. And then you can kind of through those stages see kind of like love form and build over time. And so the first stage that we typically see in a romantic relationship is that honeymoon phase, like you're describing. The sparks are flying. There's so much infatuation. There's so much excitement and just like want to be with one another and like have this little cocoon, and feelings can come on like hot and heavy and can come on really strong. And I think actually it's in these times, in this like honeymoon phase, especially early on in the honeymoon phase, where I think love gets actually confused with infatuation. And so I don't know if that resonates for you, or if you've kind of seen that in some of the relationships that you've viewed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially when it happens so early, that those overwhelming feelings can like mimic this other feeling that love has, of the like that whole idea of I don't want this to end and I never want to let this go, and I never want to live without this. That like that can be in that whole like infatuation stage where it's not quite, of course, love, like true actual love hasn't formed yet, because you don't have that period of time yet where you've developed that respect and that trust and that like understanding each other's values and all of that. That hasn't happened yet. So what you're really basing that off of is just this attraction and this pull to be with somebody. Right.
And as we talked about with Carly, actually, in the premarital episode of several episodes back, we were talking about a honeymoon phase of our relationship, and there's a lot of data to support that honeymoon stage actually lasts longer than most people think, that it actually is about 2 years, that you really don't know someone fully and well enough until it's been 2 years. So you've gone through, 2 rounds of birthdays or holidays or seen each other through ups and downs, had enough time, like you're saying, to really understand someone's values or see how someone lives into their values. And so it's like during that time that infatuation can build to love as you're actually getting to know someone.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great timeline and great reference. I forgot that we talked about that. But I love that the fact that you're looking at these very important dates and very important times and like, okay, that happened once, but like, can it happen twice? And like,
Mm-hmm.
is this going to be consistent? And you can really see that only over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And the other thing in a honeymoon period is like, because a relationship is newer, maybe you are prioritizing the relationship a lot more. And so like your main focal point is your relationship and over like other relationships or maybe sometimes other responsibilities. Physical intimacy tends to be at its all-time high in this honeymoon phase. And again, you're seeing kind of the best, like the best representative of a person like in that early on period. And so that's where like the honeymoon phase can be so lovely, but also might lull you into a false sense of security if you don't continue to build on and like take actionable steps to kind of maintain that a similar level of love, interest, intimacy, all of that stuff.
And I mean, I think that that's a great way to just start to talk about, well, what kind of love are we talking about? Like, what kind of love are you expecting to pull into these other years and like months and years and decades of your life? Like, are you thinking it's going to look like that?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you thinking it's going to look like something else? Because if your expectation is, well, those first 2 years, that's what it was. And it was beautiful and perfect. And then something happened. And like, now, like, is this love? Is this, does this mean we're not in love anymore? What is this? So I think that can throw a lot of people off.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, the expectations piece, I think, is huge. And whether that's you're comparing your now relationship to your relationship at the beginning, or you might have references of love or love stories or relationships that you are kind of measuring your relationship up against, whether that's like some, I don't know, very stereotypical, like Disney princess idea, fairy tale love, or it might be like, I don't know. It could
or any rom-com we saw growing up.
Rom-com. Or maybe it's you're comparing it to the way that you saw your family or your parents experience their relationship. You might have only seen the highlights from them. You know, I don't know. And so there's a lot, as you're saying, whether it's obvious or not, expectations about what love is and how love shows up in a relationship.
What are some other things that you feel like cause this kind of doubt and this questioning of like, if this doesn't look like it did, then what is this? Is this still love?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think whenever there might be a change, maybe it's like a change in, I don't know how frequently you are engaging in conversation, or what the nature of like the quality of your conversation is. Like, do we still have that spark? Do we have anything to talk about anymore? Maybe there is a shift in how much time you are spending intentional time together. Like, you know, I've heard people say, like, I feel like all we do is like sit next to each other on the couch on our phones and like watch TV, or we never, you know, go out to dinner anymore, or like it's always like us talking about the kids, or, you know, so whenever there are changes within a relationship or a change from the way things used to be to the way that they are now, I think that can cause a lot of doubt of like, oh my gosh, like, can we recover? Can we get back what brought us here in the first place? And then I think there are like the other realities, the maybe in some ways, maybe more superficial things that might bring doubt, but changes in attraction to one another that, you know, as people age, they look different. Their skin looks different. Their hair might look different. Their body might look different. One person in the relationship might be going through a little bit of a rut. Maybe one thing that was so attractive about that person at the beginning was like how motivated and how ambitious they are. And now they're not. And so that could have an impact on like, oh my gosh, is this going to work? All the ingredients of this recipe that were here at the beginning aren't here anymore. Then like, can we still make a cake? You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah. Right. Sometimes it's the relationship, and sometimes it's the two people that make up that relationship, the individuals, and like what's going on for each of them as time goes on. Yeah, you're right. But those, I mean, as visual as some of these things may be, like it's not superficial if it's not, again, like going with those expectations that you had before, that if you anticipated any of these things happening and you were still anticipating your feelings for this person as you know, they underwent something huge, then that's different. But like, again, it's lining up with what you thought was going to happen, that expectation versus reality.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. And the other thing, and maybe this also goes in that same category, but I was also thinking about people who might start in relationships like maybe really young before they've like fully developed into like a full adult, that sometimes couples can grow apart. Maybe like as they grow up, they grow apart rather than like growing together. And that also I think can cause some kind of doubt or concern about like, again, can we recover? Can we keep the love, or is the love still here? Or how do we find that love again?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like empty nesters are a perfect example of that. That all of a sudden it's back to the two of them and they're looking at each other like, what do we do now? What is this? How do we function as a couple? Because we haven't just been a couple for so long. Of course, anybody would be confused if they're not, again, and like intentionally making that space for each other and intentionally growing together as opposed to growing apart or just having this distance between you two.
Right. And I guess that kind of is a recipe for like losing a love, is like that loss of connection. And we'll get into a little bit later about like how to keep a great love. But like in calling it a great love, you did reference in our little teaser that there is this theory about three big loves or three loves. Can you say a little bit more about that?
I just want to also hopefully, emphasize here that it is just a theory, and I feel personally attacked. I feel personally victimized by, without saying too much, like I've only been on them once. So hopefully this is going to be the only
one and only.
What about you?
I mean, I think the three loves tracks for me for sure, which is wild. And so, yeah, like, of course it's a theory. It doesn't fit for everyone, but like, damn, like this fits. So it
makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Again, if you are like so much developing like on a quote unquote normal trajectory that you might not to call you abnormal, Catherine, but this is pretty typical. So what's the first love that someone
Okay, so it's usually surface level. It's your first love. The first love is the first love, obviously. It usually doesn't get deeper than that. That doesn't get deeper than kind of like this infatuation that we're talking about. You're feeling all the feels, but then once it ends, you're realizing like, oh wow, that didn't last forever, and this isn't going to last forever. So like this reality part hits you too, along with this fantasy that it feels like you're living.
Yeah. No, high school boyfriend, first love.
Yeah.
And having the multiple loves, like that is, again, that tracks that feeling of like, it's you're encountering this like feeling for the first time, and it's so exciting, and it feels so good. And yeah, you do have this feeling of like, oh my God, is this it? But then again, depending on developmentally where you are, like I referenced high school boyfriend. For me, I was not at any level emotionally, maturity wise, to like get to like an actual true, like deep romantic love with this person. I just like wasn't actually like kind of capable of that at that time. But yeah, it's like kind of funny to think, oh my God, I thought I was going to marry this guy, when I didn't really know him, like really, really, like where it really matters. I didn't really know him. And so I think that's so funny to think about.
Mm-hmm. I think just going back to this love is blind thing, like I feel like this first love is so blinding that you're just like, yeah, you're just looking into the future like, wow, of course this is going to be like the person forever. And more often than not, that's not the case.
Right. Well, I think the first love is a little naive, right? Like it's romantic. It's all romantic. And like, as we've talked about, and we'll get to, like, love, long-term relationships are a mix of romance and practicality. Like, and that first love doesn't really have a lot of that like practicality to it, because it might not need to, depending on the stage of life that you're in. Or
right, depending on like what
to like ruin it with the logistics.
Exactly. Like depending on where you are in life, what resources you have in life at that time. Like if this is high school and you don't have to potentially, you potentially don't have to worry about paying for your meals or putting the roof over your own head.
Right.
That's much different than the love that you're going to experience when you're living on your own and independent.
Yeah. It's all, it could be before you have any actual responsibilities and stressors. Yeah.
So how about the second one?
Second love. It's a little bit more intense and can feel like a roller coaster. But it's in this relationship that we learn a lot more maybe than in our first one, because we can use this relationship as an opportunity to really learn what we want and what we don't want. And I feel like that's the thing that gets activated within this relationship. Like what makes it feel like a roller coaster is you still have those like kind of big romantic infatuation feelings, but also met with like like, I don't know that I like this, or this doesn't feel good. And then those two things kind of butting up against each other.
Yeah. It's almost like you're learning so much more about yourself by this second love that there's bound to be so much more friction than in that first love, where you're getting swept off your feet and you're just like going with the flow of things. Like this second love, this is more intense because you're both at this point now, or at least one of you's at this point now, where you might not want the same things for each other. And that already can cause a lot of challenges.
Right. And I guess it's also like in talking about this second type of love, it's such a good plug for dating in general. Like one of the whole points of dating is to learn more about what you want and don't want, like and don't like. And yeah, sometimes it is going through a process of like trial and error, maybe with people that you're dating. But that's kind of the point, is to get to a better understanding of what you want and what you don't want, and who lines up with that. Like, and so it's through this second love that you learn about that. And yeah, my second love was my college boyfriend. Are we noticing a trend here? And I definitely resonate with that. And again, stage of life too. I was emerging into adulthood, learning about who I was, and same with him, both of us kind of navigating our own life stage transitions, just all sorts of things. And it was very intense and, but also kind of chaotic and not great, but also felt like love. In retrospect, I don't know that it was, but it felt like it was at the time.
Mhm. And that's so interesting, the hindsight of it, how you can look back at these and question it because it doesn't look like the love that you have now, which in this third love, in this potentially last love, hopefully for you and me.
I've run out of loves.
Yeah.
It better be.
I don't want to use the two other ones. This one's the unconditional love. So this is like the one that you've been wanting forever. This is you feel like yourself, you inspire each other, you're growing together, and you're realizing that, oh, what I've actually wanted out of love, this is it. And it actually does exist. And I can actually trust this person and feel safe with them and feel admired by them and adored. And I can do the same for them. And like, it's a much more transcendent kind of love than these other two.
Right. And it's a more stable love, more secure love, that it doesn't have that like roller coastery vibe to it, that it is a lot more balanced. And as you're saying, like there is a feeling of, or an experience of being seen and understood and valued, and that's reciprocated, and that you feel as though the other person knows what your values are and respects them, like knows what your goals are and supports you, like all of those things that make a partnership actually feel like contribute to the love.
Yeah. Another thing to note about this kind of love is you're so well attuned to how they handle stress, how they handle being tired, exhaustion, and what it's like for them when they're sad, and how they handle disappointment, that you know how to respond when they're feeling all these things, and vice versa. So these things also aren't the mystery. And I think that probably just points back to the lack of a roller coaster that kind of love is compared to that more intense one.
Yeah, for sure. And so if someone is fortunate enough to have found this kind of great love, this big love, this unconditional love, how can they keep it? They've gone through maybe the trials and tribulations of the roller coasters and the infatuations and heartbreak maybe, and then they found this person and it's going well. What should they be thinking about?
I think one place to start is to really understand the love and really what it is, like the role that it's playing in your life, that you're actually examining it rather than just knowing that it exists and knowing that it's there. That, going back to what we were saying before, like you're intentionally looking at like what kind of presence it has, and what I'm really thinking about what that really means. Like you and I threw around a lot of things about what love is and how it has to do with liking this person's personality and then liking yours, and respecting each other's values, and respecting and helping them reach their goals. And if these things are there, I mean, they need to be checked in on, and they need to be looked at. Right.
Yeah, right. And I think that's, being very aware and reflective about and observant of how love is showing up in your relationship, kind of like naming it as that, and also thinking about and being attentive to if you are seeing a shift in those things, and figuring out how to address that.
And then understanding yourself as a part of that, and also your partner and the emotions that they experience. A lot of what we focus on is like what it should look like and how it should be, but like not enough on the emotions. And it's so funny because yes, love is a verb, but like love is so emotional, and we need to be in tune with those emotions, not only for ourselves and for our own well-being and our self-care, but for our partner and for the betterment of our relationship.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's yeah, a really, really good point. I guess my mind's going in two different ways about it. Like, yes, remembering that love is a feeling too. Like I do think of it a lot as an action, because it reminds me that like I need to keep it up and like keep doing it. But there is the emotion too. And yeah, letting yourself like feel the emotion, like, and I think along with that maybe goes with the appreciation for maybe some of the actions, maybe that those two things go hand in hand there in letting yourself recognize and feel the love that you are receiving and feel the love that you're giving, to like, let it fill you in a way, because I think that is part of what kind of contributes to the rut experience, is just kind of going through the motions, or this is just what we do, that you lose sight of the deeper meaning behind the actions. And so like, yeah, kind of like remembering like, no, there's a feeling that accompanies these actions, I think can help it to feel less like we're just doing our chores, you know?
Yeah. Well, and so many couples that I've worked with, are so reluctant to show that appreciation for those regular day-to-day things, that they are in that mindset of like, this is just what we do. And like, we don't need to recognize it. That's not necessary. But you really do need to show your appreciation for these little things that over time add up and play a huge part in you two taking care of each other.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. And then to your second point about the like kind of two individuals in our relationship, I think it is also being aware of yourself, like within the relationship, whether it's like making sure that you are responsible for your own emotions, that you are doing your own work to make sure that you are kind of taking care of yourself, that you have that your own experience of like self-love and self-respect and all of that stuff, self-regulation, all of the great qualities, so that when you are in the thick of it with a partner, that you have a steady base to kind of go back to internally. Because sometimes, and as we've talked about in many other episodes related to relationships, that oftentimes what can lead to a lot of conflict in relationships that's unproductive is when both partners feel maybe a little like dysregulated or untethered. And so the more I feel like that an individual can kind of like work on themselves, that just puts a greater investment into your partnership.
Yeah. Work on themselves and like have time for themselves, and just in general, that like they're not throwing everything that they have into the relationship, that they're leaving some for themselves. Right. You know, they're engaging in things that they like to engage in. I mean, another thing we did talk about with Carly was how the evolution of relationships and how they've changed over time, that we kind of have now expected them to be the place where we get everything. And that wasn't always the case. And and it doesn't necessarily mean that it should be the case, that we should be able to get fulfillment in our individual lives, as well as our relationships. So making sure that that's happening, one, obviously, so that resentment doesn't grow, but also so that you're not solely so that you're not solely looking for something in your relationship that like it either can't bring to you or doesn't have to bring to you.
Yes. Yeah. Such a good point. Yes. Like keep, like there's the, your life, their life, and then your life together kind of thing, like making sure that you do have like that fulfillment outside of your relationship. And maybe I feel like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, but like, it is also important to still, this is so cliche, but like date your spouse or date your significant other, that like still coming together as a romantic couple, as whether it's husband and wife or just, two people that are dating in a committed relationship, actually intentionally coming together to spend quality time with one another, to build unique experiences, to remember that part of your relationship and to keep that alive and going. And I feel like this is something that I see slip away like very quickly. Again, whether it's just through like monotony or just changes in life stages, or just changes in general, that for whatever reason, and probably for a lot of reasons, that piece of whether it's a marriage or a long-term relationship slips away. Maybe it's the comfort or the complacency, but that it's a cliche for a reason to continue to date your spouse, because it can feel so challenging to keep up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The creating new experiences one is huge. I mean, it's certainly huge for me. Mm-hmm. That's something that actually my husband always gets made fun of in his family, because every time they ask him, like, what do you want as a gift? And he's like, an experience. Mm-hmm. But it's true. I mean, and then more often than not, like the gift ends up being something for the two of us to do. Mm-hmm. But like, that's so important. And when you're creating new experiences with somebody, you're learning new things together and you're learning new things about each other, and you're creating these opportunities that otherwise wouldn't exist. Mm-hmm. And so it's keeping up with something that probably did exist in those earlier years in your relationship, because every time you were coming together, it was something exciting. It was something new. Mm-hmm. And so if you're especially wanting to keep that part of your relationship alive and growing, then that has to come with it. Mm-hmm. You can't get that without doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, for sure. And you do get to experience, not only learn something new with one another, but like you're experiencing a different part of yourself and of them as well, like in this new experience, and you're building on you're creating a memory. And I think that's also such a beautiful thing that like can be an anchor and can be a touchstone, especially maybe when things are feeling a little bit like fraught, or again, a little bit more stale, or that you have like this like treasure chest of a bunch of things that you've done and built together.
I mean, another thing to highlight here is that we all really want to feel seen and heard and understood by each other. And so if you want to sustain your love, you have to sustain those actions. And like going back to how love is an action, that is such an action to really look at your partner and really, really understand them and really hear them out. As long as you are listening and you are validating and you are in the trenches with them, you're responsive, that's something that'll help things sustain.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. To continue to notice one another. And I think like it sounds so small and so trivial, but I hear so many people say, and I, for myself, have often experienced this too, especially in times of just a lot of busyness or a lot of things going on. Like, wait, have I looked my partner in the eyes? Like, have we actually seen one another like today or this week? Have we talked about anything other than, I don't know, just like the day-to-day stuff? Like, again, have I actually seen them? Have I seen what they're doing? Like, have I opened my eyes to, see whatever that, I don't know, the sink is emptied or whatever, any of that kind of stuff, like that appreciation, that awareness, that actual connection in that way goes such a long way. And I think that is something that, again, people in long-term relationships, and I'll include myself in this, the complacency, I think, is just from a place of just feeling really comfortable, and maybe feeling a little too secure sometimes, that you might take those things for granted. And I think that's something that in my relationship that I really, really try to not do, and to like I can get so busy and caught up and like in the weeds with work or other stuff going on that like it does take active effort for me to, as I just said, like, have I, given my husband a compliment, today or recently or something like that, just like bringing the extra attention to that, even though I know like everything's good and I love him and he loves me, like still trying to bring the same attention that I would earlier on in our relationship when it was maybe a little less secure.
Yeah. Yeah. It is so interesting that like when it's less secure, the actions that follow. And then when things are secure, the lack of actions that follow, when it really needs to be this exact same action happening, no matter what feeling you have.
Yeah. Another thing I think that is important is like to keep communication kind of open, and whether that's to be able to to keep communication open so that there is an opportunity for you and your partner to share, like, if you are feeling like things might be a little bit off. Like there have been times within my relationship too, where I've said to my husband, like, I feel like we're not connecting like as much as we used to, or like we used to. Like, do you notice that? Like, what's getting in the way? Like being able to have those conversations, or I'm feeling a shift in whatever in this area. Can we do something about that? So like that there is this kind of like conversation and communication about your relationship, that it kind of still.
Well, and that also just points to the safety that you feel in your relationship to be so vulnerable to say that. That's also a great indicator of the type of love that you're in, this third love, that you feel trusting enough, like you feel like that's a safe enough place for you to voice that, where a lot of people don't necessarily feel that.
Right. Yeah. And it can get tough. And as I think you and I were both alluding to before, if communication doesn't really stay open, and that maybe you're having these doubts or concerns, or maybe you're not feeling seen or heard, or you're not feeling appreciated, that can kind of fester, and it can result in a couple of different ways, whether that's like kind of a turning away from your relationship, or like result in like more conflict or more kind of unproductive or more explosive arguments, like an acting out kind of thing. And so like, as we, in our conflict episode, like we talked about, like the conflict is often information, or like that feeling of like not even wanting to bother with your relationship anymore. That's information. It's telling you something about the gap in your connection. And if you can look at it as information, then it can give you at least a little bit of a direction about how to kind of reconnect toward the love that you had at the beginning.
Yeah. What are some things that you feel like might be getting in the way of helping things along, to like getting in the way of keeping this great love alive?
I think it's a couple of things. Maybe it's, I don't know if this sounds terrible, but I think it is kind of sometimes a lack of effort, like top of mind effort. But I think there are, like, again, real life things that go on that maybe feel like they take a bigger priority than your love story. And so whether that's, a life stage, having a baby, maybe taking a new job, maybe a move to a different city, maybe the loss of a parent, like these things that take a bigger priority momentarily or for a period of time, that I think that can be a big contributor as well.
Yeah, you're totally right.
What do you think?
I also think if there's been like cycles of the same kinds of arguments over and over again, that even if they're minuscule arguments, that those add up over time. And also, you and I know that these arguments are often showing something else underneath the surface, that there's something else going on. There's some other issues in the relationship. And some of those issues might be things that we've addressed here. Some of those issues might be that you're not creating new experiences together and spending that quality time together. You're not understanding each other. You're not really seeing each other. And so it results in this bickering or into these big blowout arguments that happen every once in a while or daily. So an emphasis on the argument too can really pull people apart, especially when they're so frequent. So if those are happening, then that's the relationship that you feel like you're living in. And that's the data that you're pulling from to show where your relationship is at, as opposed to really getting underneath it and trying to move past whatever it is or work through whatever it is.
You're right. And I know we've talked about this in a previous episode too. Like when those arguments continue to resurface, it can sometimes be a me versus you rather than us versus the problem. And when that me versus you comes up, that is such a breeding ground for so much resentment and just frustration with your partner rather than the situation itself. And of course, like, who would want to be invested in a relationship when you're feeling like you two are like always battling, or that there's like, gosh, this unresolved thing that like, it makes sense that like the love would kind of burn out if you're not like, fanning the flame with these other things. Well, okay, Catherine, let me ask you, you and your husband have been together for quite a while. If you were to give like 3 things that you and your husband do regularly, or even just like as part of your relationship that like help you stay in love, like what would those things be?
Okay. So definitely the creating new experiences. Like I said, that's huge. And that can be something that we do on the weekends regularly. Like, it doesn't have to be so like as drastic or as huge as a vacation, although that's great, but it can be like, he and I love coffee. It can be like going to a new coffee shop. It can be like, right now he's actually really obsessed with coffee, and he's like he and I are both learning about the process of making coffee and like where beans are sourced from. And like, we're doing that together, which is so fun. And so definitely creating new experiences and learning together. I would group that together though. And then pulling away from the day, whether that is this week where will be picking him up from work tonight and just checking in with each other instead of just falling into a routine. Okay, we get home and we do this and we make dinner. Like actually having real conversations with each other. And then on a less frequent note, but equally as important, we'll have these periodic, I couldn't even tell you how often they happen because they're out of the blue, but just really important. Just asking each other, how are we doing? How is this? Do you need anything from me? Is there anything that I can help you with? Is there anything I can be doing differently? And vice versa. Like, we'll actually ask each other those questions.
Yeah, I love that.
How about you?
Let's see. Definitely Friday night date nights. That's like kind of a non-negotiable that we have, and really kind of born out of us like going through a really busy time and realizing like, oh, we haven't actually spent time as a couple, and we like just weren't satisfied with that. That was like not what we wanted from this marriage. And so, yeah, every Friday night, 6:30, we have like a standing dinner reservation and no phones. We can't talk about work. And that it's a time that we just kind of, I don't know, hear about each other's week, or we might like talk about like something silly that happened. It's just like kind of a fun, it's like a time that I laugh a lot during the week. And so that is always something I look forward to. And again, it depends on the week. Like sometimes that date night will extend past dinner, and like we'll come home and whether watch something, or sometimes we'll like go somewhere after, go for a walk. or sometimes on busier weeks, maybe after dinner, like we have to like go back to work or something like that. But like we have that time like protected and reserved no matter what, no exceptions. So that's been really, really helpful, because even in the weeks where it feels like we're not connected, we know that that's like kind of a home base. So that definitely hear you on the kind of like shared experiences thing. Earlier on in our relationship, we were the couple that was kind of in a rut. It felt like all we did was watch TV together, and that was like the only thing. And we kind of similarly were like, this sucks. Like, this isn't what we signed up for here. And so we each came up with the idea of like a hobby. And so we started doing a couple of hobbies together, and ballroom dance has stuck. So we have that kind of shared experience weekly. We also like really love to travel as well and kind of build new memories that way. And then similar to you too, like periodically, like very regular, like our anniversary is definitely a time that we do this, but pretty regularly we do check in, like, you know, not quite like what's going well, what's not, but basically, I mean, like for our anniversary, we talk about like, what was like your favorite thing that we did this year? Like, what was something that like we didn't do this year that you want to do next year? Like that kind of stuff. And I think it helps us. We also, Catherine, I know you know this, but like we go back to the area that we got married every year. And that also, I think, keeps our like love story, like feeling alive and feeling like fresh. And so I feel like those are like the three big things, but we talk about our relationship a lot. Like as I've shared on other episodes, like it's one of my top 3 priorities. And so like, I want to make sure that it's getting the time and attention that it needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love all those things that you do, all those rituals, and those are so important.
Yeah, it's been fun.
It's been fun. All right. Well, I hope we answered the question. Does love really last forever?
Yeah, it can. But if you are in a season of having a great love, Catherine really loves love, but I mean, I don't hate on it, but we would love to hear your love story. I would love to know that. And if you are doing something in addition to what Catherine and I shared, or even if it is like in that similar list of like 5 or 6 things that Catherine and I both shared that we do in our relationship, we'd love to hear what those things are for you too, like how you've kept your great love alive. That would be really cool to hear.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. Oh, we'll share love stories.
Catherine's face right now is amazing. So you can, I'll let you know in just a second where you can send your great love stories to, but we do just want to thank you for listening to us, for following along, for giving us ratings and reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It really means so much to us and really gives us a better sense of how we can help you on your wellness journey. So keep those reviews coming, keep the follows coming. And also, don't forget to follow us on YouTube as well. We have so much going on there, including our weekly bonus podcast, Reactivity TV, where we talk about all the trending shows that you're watching. We're watching them too. So go check that out. You could also follow us on Instagram at ReviveCFW. You can follow Catherine at Catherine Van Eyck, me at Amy Albero LCSW. Check out our website, revivecfw.com, and email us those love stories to wishingyouvell@revivecfw.com. Until next time, we are wishing you well.